Hello, and welcome to Lecture 8 in our 4 Weeks on Water curriculum. Today we'll be talking about data. First, I want to start with the concepts of big data and small data. Let's start with small data. The words big and small when referring to data refer to the amount of data in a particular data set. When dealing with small data sets, there are relatively small amounts of data or data entries in that data set. An example of this type of data would be the average daily temperature in a stream for a year. There might be a temperature data logger in a stream recording temperature and logging the average temperature for each day, and this means that after 1 year, there would be 365 data points in that data set. This type of data can be collected by submerging a waterproof temperature data logger into a stream. Here's an example of one type of data logger, provided by a company called Onset. This data logger is put into a PVC case, which is attached with cable to a cement block. This cement block is then anchored to the stream bed by a piece of rebar in the stream. Here you can see the piece of cement block, and actually the piece of rebar is right here, and you can see the PVC case down underneath the water. This allows for the water temperature to be recorded by the data logger. This temperature data logger can be left in the stream year-round to record temperature data and then retrieved and brought to the lab to download the data onto the computer. If the logger is recording an average temperature for each day, this means that after 1 year there would be 365 data points in that data set. Here's an example of a data set like this in an Excel spreadsheet. You can see we have a column for date and a column for average daily temperature. And if I scroll down, you can see we have all of the days of the year represented. So we have 365 data points right down to the last day of December. We could very easily query these data points. We could quickly and fairly easily scan through this data set just to look at some of the different numbers. We could manipulate this data set fairly easily to get us average monthly temperature, or we could graph these data points, which I've actually already done here. Graphs are pretty easy to produce in Excel, and if you haven't done it before, there are some tutorials online in order to accomplish that. You can see in this graph I have temperature in degrees centigrade on my y-axis and date on my x-axis, and you can see that data that we were just scrolling through represented as a line graph. And then I also have a fairly descriptive title. This is the type of visual we might expect you to produce as part of this 4 Weeks on Water curriculum. Big data, however, is different. We use the term big data when we're dealing with a data set with many thousands of data points in it. For example, say we're still looking at stream temperature, and we still have a temperature data logger in a stream collecting temperature data. But say this time we have it collecting data every 6 minutes all year long. If a temperature data logger is collecting data every 6 minutes, that means we have 10 data points every hour, 240 every day, and 87,600 data points every year. If that same temperature data logger is collecting data every 3 minutes instead of every 6, we've just doubled that to 175,200 data points for a single data set. A really good example of big data being collected is through the Lovotex network, which we went over in video lecture 3B. With 68 Lovotex sites just in New Hampshire, there is a potential for 14.2 million data points collected each year. Here's that Google map to remind you of those different locations of the Lovotex sensors in New Hampshire. This amount of data is a little more difficult to deal with quickly. For example, if you tried to even open this data in Excel, it would probably crash your computer. So instead of storing this data as a normal Excel spreadsheet, it may get stored as something called a comma-separated values file. That's a file with an extension .csv in a large database. And we could use different querying tools or querying software to access this data. When dealing with the Lovotex data, you're going to have to be able to figure out which sites represent the data that you want to download based on your research question. I want to tell you guys about a document that will help you to figure out which data sets you want to download for which sites. On the 4 Weeks on Water curriculum website, you'll find a document titled Lovotech Sensor Sites and Descriptions underneath the Data folder. When you open this document, I've put together a series of Google Map images, which I'm going to scroll through here with some descriptions below them that will help you to see the locations of the different data collection sites. And I've moved my way from north to south, more zoomed in on the sites. And then at the end of the document, there's a whole chart which tells you the 3-letter code for that site, gives you a description and a location of that site, and actually also gives you a latitude and longitude GPS location for that site. So that will be useful when you guys are trying to figure out which data sets you want to download. Moving on from here, I've created several short videos specific to the type of data that you're going to be downloading. Please look for these videos on the 4 Weeks on Water curriculum website.